Good evening, everyone. I'm so sorry I had some technical issues getting in today. Excuse me.
Oh no. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, let me see. Oh.
I'm going to keep an eye, Joy, on the list of participants as they come in because I'm on my phone, so it's a little bit harder to do both at once. So can I ask you, Joy, to go ahead and start the meeting and introduce our guest speakers for the meeting?
Of course, yes. Did you want to wait another minute, or are we good to go?
Let's just see. Let me see who's coming in here.
Right.
Okay. I think we are good for now. So we'll go ahead and then I will keep an eye out for participants as they continue to join. But I will go ahead and actually go ahead and start us off. Welcome all of you. And for those of you who are new to our meetings, my name is Karen Bachuki. I'm the PTO president. And I've got with me this evening, Joy Pasamonte Henry, our vice president, who is going to introduce our speakers for this evening. We also have a few more members of our board. We're happy to have everybody here this evening. And we've got a really special presentation planned. And we're just also so lucky to have with us two of our administrators. We have Mr. Eric Dean with us this evening and Miss Pam Dzinski, our principal. So thank you both for joining us. And I'm not going to steal Joy's thunder. I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce this wonderful presentation that she has coordinated with our wellness counselors and introduce the team. So thank you, Joy.
Thanks, Karen. And this is being recorded for folks, so if they're unable to join, then they'll be able to check it out later. So this is actually one of a three-part series that we're hosting with the Wellness Center, our wellness counselors, and Dr. Veal. So I'm extremely excited. This is a topic that you've probably seen in the news, and sadly even in the local news. You know, and this is really information on substance abuse and fentanyl. So I don't want to take up time. Again, very important topic. So hopefully we'll have time later on to be able to answer any questions. But Dr. Veal, I will turn it over to you and your team.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. Again, I'm Dr. Stacia Veal. I'm the lead wellness counselor at Mills. And like Joy said, I'm really excited about the topic tonight. It's a very important topic. It's a topic that us as wellness counselors, we talk to students about all the time. And because of that, we have a very specific and special team within our district. And I will turn it over to Dr. Jessamy. She'll talk about our district team as well as supports we provide to our students. So Dr. Jessamy. You're on mute.
So it's been like it's been a long story about me getting here. So I've literally been running because our groups run late and I'm in San Francisco and I couldn't stay at the district office past 8. So it was a little bit of wiggling, and I have a 2.5-year-old that I'm hiding from. So I apologize for the lighting in this room. So I'm Dr. Jessamy Cadigan, and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and your tobacco use prevention education mental health therapist. And we have a million hats. And we do your alternative to suspension program, which a lot of our programs are actually also self-referral. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about our programs, to make sure everybody knows about them. And then we're also going to go into kind of our 3 PSAs, which are, we like to talk about fentanyl. We like to talk about high THC in vape products these days, and then the high nicotine content in the pods and so the e-cigs. So those are our three kind of like public service announcements, or whenever we get anything like less than 90 minutes to talk about, we make sure we focus on those. And if we have more time, we can talk a little bit more about our approach, and then also kind of about how to have those conversations with our students, at least how we do it, because you do it your way. And without us talking more about who you are as people and about your family and about your values and about your family rules, we can't really tell you how to have that conversation, because it depends on all of us, who we are as people and how we kind of approach our family and our relationships in those family, within our family and with our children, to decide how we're going to have these conversations. But we can give you some ideas about how we do it and what our kind of intention and approach is.
I am Amelia Nash, and I am also a therapist and work with Jessamy at the district office doing our alternative to suspension programs. And also we do a lot of presentations to the health classes across the district. So we definitely come to Mills. So we work closely with Justin, and we saw all of the 9th grade health classes in the fall, and we're going to just schedule today to do them in the spring as well. So if you have a 9th grader, likely they have seen us or will, and we've been doing this for a number of years. So even if you have an older student, they might have seen us. So I will share my screen and we can get started.
And you're welcome to ask questions throughout. I don't know if you stop right at 8:15, or we plan to stop at probably 8:05 at the latest to have time for questions, but we can also do questions throughout, especially in a small group. So we're here today to talk about some of the trends that are important for you to know. And we kind of just, I've already said, kind of spoiler alert, we're going to talk about fentanyl, high THC content, and then high nicotine content in the vapes, e-cigs, and the carts and the pods. And we will talk a bit about how to talk to your kids about this tricky terrain, and then also our resources, what we have to support our students in our community with. And then we also actually have relationships with outside resources too. So we have kind of a whole process that we go through with our students when we're kind of figuring out where people are at in this relationship with substance use.
And feel free to put anything into the chat. I'll be monitoring that, and so we can stop and clarify things as well. Sometimes Jessamy and I talk in a little bit of lingo because this is what we do. Is really work with substances most of the time. We go to a lot of conferences and we read a lot of journals and things like that. So we can sometimes get a little bit fast and talk in jargon that people might not understand. So please, please, please ask questions if we're not, sometimes we assume a level of knowledge that not everybody has. So we like when people ask questions, just in general anyway.
For instance, we once had a conversation with students about cannabis, and about, halfway, 3/4 way through the presentation, the student said, "What's cannabis?" And that's probably something we should define as, before, and maybe use some of the more, normal terms like weed and marijuana. And so, we're starting off this, we usually start most of our conversations or presentations with this idea about kind of like setting the stage. So one of the most important things that we keep in mind when we're doing the work that we do is the adolescent brain versus the adult brain. And it's something we talk to the students about too, and we try to pique their interest in their own brain development. And so one of the things that we often talk to students about is that if you look at the adolescent brain, it's really busy. And, at this time, a lot of you may already know this, and a lot of the students know this. I didn't know this till I was in grad school, and students know this now in like 9th and 10th grade. And I'm like, wow, they're so smart. So, the teenage brain is doing something it only does one other time in our life, and that's when we're babies. And it's myelinating, it's proliferating, it's pruning. So all the things that teens are telling their brains are important are all the things they spend a lot of time on. So we like to talk to teens about how, if you're spending a lot of time on your music, sports, or academics, your family, social media, whatever that is, if you're spending time on that, that's how your brain knows something is important. And so it's going to take that, it's going to take that with it to adulthood. And if you look at the adult brain, it's kind of chilling, it's been pruned, it's got its, it's got its important connection made. So that's one of the things that we talk a lot about. And, one of the concerns about anybody, and especially young people at this time, using a lot of substances, often in high concentrates, is that they're telling their brain that it's really important. And so there's a lot that goes with that.
And one of the things that, someone I think is not muted. Oh, there we go. One of the things we like to talk to teens about, especially in 9th grade, because that's kind of the beginning of all of this pruning and myelinating that goes till they're 12 to 25, is that teen brains are actually wired to experiment and to try new things. And they actually get higher releases of dopamine than adults do. So a lot of things about the teen brain can go hand in hand with substance use. So, they're wired to want to do things, for themselves and try new things. And that's how they get a lot of stimulation. So we like to talk to them in 9th grade, just so they have the best information that they can have to make the best decision for themselves. We come from something called a harm reduction standpoint. So when we come to talk to kids, we don't tell them that drugs are bad, and they are wrong, and they're going to become homeless and in jail if they ever use drugs, because we know that that does not resonate with teens. They pretty much turn off if we came at it from that standpoint. So we are really all about giving them great information. So especially in 9th grade, most students haven't experimented very much in 9th grade. So we want to give them great information. So in the future, if substances cross their paths, which it's very likely that they will, we see an increase in substance use every year from freshman year through senior year. We get that from our data from our Healthy Kids survey. So we know that it's possible that it might cross their path, and we won't be there. And parents are likely not going to be there either. So it's going to be up to the teen to make the best decision for themselves. So that's why we like to give them great information, because their brains are kind of wired to try things. And so who knows what might happen with that. So the information you're going to see right now is things that we tell all of the students that we see.
So one of the ways that we frame our conversation is that oftentimes when Amelia and I have done presentations, and we've had substitute teachers there, or different teachers, sometimes they'll say, it seems like you're promoting drug use. And we're like, no, that's not our intention at all. We have no desire to promote drug use, of course. However, the way we kind of look at this is that if you never go in the ocean, you'll never get bit by a shark. And that's great. Conversation over. And for about 85 to 90% of our students, that's all they need. They just need, and it's really going to support their decision-making process. And a lot of them won't. Most students in high school do not use drugs and alcohol, even if it's at its highest, like 29% of 10th graders used alcohol 1 or more times a month, in 2018 or whatnot, whatever the stat is, there's still 71% who are not using. So it's always more students who are not using. However, we really have to have this conversation in a nuanced way, because we're about prevention, and we're about education and support. And then we also work with a lot of students who do use. And if we just tell them not to, that's not going to really help us. But so if they are going to go in the water, we also want them to have as much safety precautions and harm reduction strategies as possible, because we want them to live long, complicated lives filled with successes and failures and all that there is to experience in this windy road on this journey. So one of the things we talk about is fentanyl, and this is exactly the conversation we have with our students. And I do have it, but I don't have it right in front of me, actually. I brought the strips and the Narcan and everything. Is that we talk to them about that there's fentanyl in the drug supply for a reason. And that is, and that's fentanyl poisonings are on the rise. It is the leading cause of death in 18 to 44-year-olds for the last 2 years. And we want people to know, why is it in our drug supply? And one of the reasons I learned at a training was, and you can kind of put something in the chat, or you can unmute and just say your answer if you don't mind answering, is that, do you think that if a drug dealer sold their drug to somebody and they died, would that make that drug dealer more or less popular with seasoned drug users, with regular drug users? You can guess. The only reason I know this is because I went to a training. I guessed wrong, and this is what they told me.
Sometimes kids will be really smart and they'll be like, the way you're phrasing that makes me think I should answer this way. They're really good at guessing. Actually, particularly at Mills.
Mills, yep.
They were our best, like, analytical thinkers, like SAT thinkers.
Yes,
are more popular.
Our Mills students do often use test taking strategies to answer our questions, which is really fun. So Stasia, Dr. Veal, you are correct. It would make them more popular because people who are seasoned drug users have tolerance. They are really looking for something to be strong enough to let them get high. And they think that they have the tolerance that's strong enough to deal with it and that it will not kill them. And they're probably correct, or they very likely could be. Where this becomes very dangerous is with people who are experimenting with young people, with recreational drug users, people who just don't have a tolerance. So we really want people to know about fentanyl, why it's in our drug supply. And then also we just talk about how fentanyl is a beautiful drug. It's a wonderful drug. It's an opiate. It is used by medical doctors. It is created in laboratories by scientists for patients with severe pain. It is used for patients who are suffering with cancer pain. It is used for women during childbirth. It is also used, a student told us that their friend used it. So, they had really bad, and it was a Mill student who had broken both their arms in a biking accident and they used it. So fentanyl is a great drug when used by doctors, when made by scientists. So it's something we don't want to get rid of, but we have to be really careful now that it's come into our drug supply.
Yeah, and it's very much in the media right now, and for good reason, because as Jessamy said, it's the #1 killer of young adults in the nation. And it didn't used to really be in our area so much, but now it definitely is. So we're telling all students these things, is that any pill that a student might get from social media or a dealer or even their friend probably is likely not a prescription. Well, if it's from their friend, like maybe, I guess, if their friend had a prescription for, some kind of painkiller, but anything they get on social media is going to be a fake pill, meaning that it could have fentanyl in it, that it is not a prescription. So on Snapchat, somebody might, that's where a lot of drug dealing is happening, by the way, is on social media. So somebody wanted to get a pill like Vicodin or OxyContin. It could have fentanyl in it. It would look exactly like Vicodin. It would be the right color. It would have the right markings. The dealer would say it was Vicodin, but it would never be Vicodin because real Vicodin from a pharmacy is way too expensive for a dealer to get and then resell. But they're going to pretend like it's real Vicodin to try to fool people. And so we are telling all students that anything that they're getting, unless they have a prescription bottle with like their name on it, or then it's likely fake. And the reason that we're telling them that is that the dealers are very smart and they are saying all the right things. They're telling kids that it's a prescription bottle. They'll even have a picture of a prescription bottle. And what they're doing is they're refilling the prescription bottle with fake pills. So if you are going to talk to your student after this presentation, I would ask them what they think about that. If they think that pills that they could get from a dealer would be like real prescription level pills or fake and possibly have fentanyl. Because most students are not aware that all the pills from social media could have fentanyl. It's kind of a new thing to know about, although it's getting more known. So that'd be the first thing. We do tell students about test strips that they can get if they were determined to try out a pill. You can test it. There's also fentanyl in cocaine. And so you can test cocaine as well with these test strips. So that does exist. Okay, and there one is. They can be ordered from Amazon. They can get them for free from an organization called Birdie Light, which is dedicated to not having casual users die from fentanyl. So that is pretty easy to get and is a definite must if somebody were very determined. What we find is that, so only a few grains of fentanyl can kill somebody. It's super duper tiny amounts. It's an elephant tranquilizer, so hardly any is needed to kill the casual user. And the problem with it is that there's no lead up to the death. It's really like you're up and then you take it and then the fentanyl hits you and you die. So what happens with kids who are experimenting is they think, oh, you know what, I want to try a Vicodin. I feel stressed and I've heard that makes you relax. So I'm going to get one from this dealer on Snapchat, and then I'm going to take it at night after I finish my homework as a little reward, and it'll help me go to sleep. And then they take it and it has fentanyl, and then their parents find them the next day dead in their room because they don't know, there's no feeling like I might die. You just die. That's how it works with fentanyl. So our number one thing that we tell all students is if they were really determined, even with all of this possibility of dying from fentanyl, if they were very determined to try is, first of all, to test it with the test strips, but really even above that is to never use alone, to always have somebody with them in case something went wrong. There is naloxone, which is also called Narcan, to reverse an overdose. You've probably heard about that. That's been in the news a lot because it really brings people back from the dead. It's really amazing. It's a nasal spray and it's super it works if you have it. However, you cannot give it to yourself because don't forget, you're already it's already hit you, you're already slumped over. So that's why you need somebody there. And even if they didn't have Narcan with them, they could call 911 and somebody could come fast enough. And that's what the EMT would administer also is Narcan. So really, really number one top thing is to not use alone. You can survive a fentanyl poisoning if somebody calls 911 and or you had Narcan to reverse it. So that is what we tell to students. We really do not want a fentanyl poisoning in our district. We're trying really hard to not have that happen. Pretty much all the districts surrounding us have had high school students who have passed away from accidental fentanyl poisonings. So oh, thank you. Walgreens is also stocked up on Narcan. Yeah, you can get it now from pharmacies. They actually give it out now. If you get an opiate prescription like OxyContin, they give you Narcan with it now. So it's really quite accessible. And some people just carry it around with them just on the off chance they run across someone who's overdosing, I guess. So there it is, very easy to get.
And this is definitely something that I have suggested for families that I've worked with who have students who are, so just to right size everybody's kind of like expectations. Very few students are using opiates. Very few students are using pills. I mean, it's a very small percentage, but there are some, and there are some that are experimenting. And like Amelia said, our students are hardwired to experiment right now. So we just want to be prepared for what we hope we will never have to use. So I have suggested to families I've worked with to get Narcan, have it on hand at the house if you think your student might be experimenting. And then it's also just great to have that conversation, show that you have it, and show that you're open to having this conversation with them. So these are some of the kind of like tools that we would suggest for people if you're concerned about or wanting to have this conversation with your student, is to get these things, to bring this information that Amelia just shared with you today and say, hey, we were at the PTO for Mills, and this is what we talked about today. What have you heard about fentanyl? What have you learned anything from school? Have you talked to your friends about this? You might have friends that are experimenting with these things. What do you think about that? So one of our big themes is keep calm and keep talking. We want to have access to our kids. We'll talk about this more at the end, but just in case we run out of time, I just want to kind of infuse some of these things that we just say that are, most likely a lot of you are already doing this. However, this can be a tricky topic for a lot of families. And it always has been, maybe it always will be. So we would love to just figure out ways to like make it accessible. We want to be accessible to our teens. We want to be their trusted adults. We want to be their partners in traversing this tricky terrain of substance use. So let me see, I think there's a question.
Is fentanyl always in pill form, or could it end up in alcohol somehow? I have never heard of it being in alcohol. I don't know about that.
Fentanyl comes in patches. It comes in I think it comes in powders. I think it probably could be in alcohol, but it would, like, somebody would have to spike the drink. Like, it wouldn't be something that would come in alcohol, if that makes sense. And they would have
something for kids to look out, for, right? Because you have kids that would never want to touch pills, but they might think of drinking alcohol. So there's just being careful about making sure. Like I tell my older daughters, never have anybody buy you drinks. Always make sure your drinks are covered. Just things like that, right? That's why the question came up. I'm sure it could be done, right?
Yeah, so it's possible, but one of the things we like to tell parents, and I've heard other presenters, like Amelia and I go see everybody we can who does this work. So we're like, are we on the right page? Are we, is our information consistent? And one of the things I've heard other people say that I feel like we both feel pretty strongly about is that it's highly unlikely that people are going to get accidentally like spiked with fentanyl. Like, that would have to be a purposeful thing. Like, most of this is like people buying drugs that are created with fentanyl purposefully to make the drug stronger. So like, even when the rainbow fentanyl came out, it was like, the drug dealers aren't going to be giving free fentanyl to kids. That's not really the intention of it. It's very much a money-making market. Accidents can happen, but yeah, that would have to be somebody who like purposefully had fentanyl and like purposely put it in somebody's drink. But I agree with you, covering drinks, and I love that harm reduction strategy and love that conversation to be having with our students, is because we want to keep our students away from Rohypnol and like those types of things that have been put, when can be put in drinks, very rarely, but it does happen. And that's one of those things that, we want to be talking to our young people about. Absolutely. Keep your drinks covered. Don't get drinks from people, that you don't see the whole thing happen, that there's any time you accepting it 100%. That's a beautiful conversation. Thank you.
And have a buddy nearby. That's all. That's really goes across everything, honestly. And we talk about it quite a bit. It's just sort of anything that you're doing. It's important to have somebody who is not, necessarily high, just to watch out for you. Just because you are in a vulnerable state when you're drinking or, using substances. So we talk about that a lot when we talk about safety.
You know what we should do, Amelia, for our next time we have a longer presentation like this? Maybe we could do the Ralph Cantor video and show the parents, because it's
in here.
Oh, yay. So, okay, well, Amelia, why don't you start this one and then we can go. I'm excited. about
Yeah,
that?
we like to talk about this. This is our second PSA, public safety announcement, is cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. And we talked to all of our students about that, and also the 9th grade health classes, because this is a new disease. And it comes about from long-term use of high concentrate THC. THC is tetrahydrocannabinol. It's the psychoactive ingredient in weed. It's the thing that makes you feel high in your head. And so, and it comes, and those, the high THC is in a weed cartridge, like a vape product. So if you were smoking actual weed, like, you know, old timey, products that we had in, you know, in the 80s, 90s, even 2000s, that actual weed, the plant, the bud, is not high THC. It's these ones that are in cartridges that you can get now. So long-term use of that, regular use, can lead to this syndrome that makes you feel really nauseous. And we like to tell people about it because a lot of students have this syndrome and they don't know it. And so it's usually not our 9th graders, but a lot of times they'll know someone or have an older sibling who has had this or might have it. So it starts with early morning nausea, and students will complain that they can't eat and they don't feel good. And a lot of times, parents will take them to the doctor. The parent totally knows that they're, you know, not eating and not feeling well and is nauseous, and they take them to the doctor, but the teen doesn't want to admit that they are using weed vape, you know, regularly, to the doctor, you know, or to their parents. So they don't say anything. And so they go undiagnosed and they get sent back home, and they're still feeling bad. And they might even, you know, go to the ER feeling bad. And if they don't say about using weed carts every day, then they'll get undiagnosed. And eventually what happens is they'll start throwing up nonstop. And at that point, they should go to the ER, because that's a dangerous situation. You can actually die from, you know, not like getting dehydrated from throwing up. So at that point, probably the ER would diagnose them. In the fairly recent past, they didn't have this disease. They didn't even know what it was. It's only in the last few years that they even had a name for it, and that the ER docs knew what to ask for, because they just haven't had weed vapes for very long. Only, like, you know, within the last decade have vapes even been a thing. So this is a recent thing we like to tell everyone, because people might be feeling bad and we don't want them to feel bad. You can stop feeling bad if you stop using your high concentrate THC vape. And so if a student were using actual plant, which they are, you know, maybe more so now, but then they would never get this, because it just has this balance of CBD, and which you probably heard about, because, you know, they have a CBD now in like lotions, and you can even get it in drinks and things like that. That's the part of weed that makes you feel relaxed, like your body feel relaxed. So actual plant has a balance of THC and CBD that never leads to this cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. That's why they didn't have it, you know, back until, you know, until recently. So if they didn't use these high concentrate THC vapes, they would never get this. So we don't want kids to feel bad. A lot of kids feel bad who are using this regularly. We know a lot of kids who have gotten to the point where they've thrown up nonstop, and that is really, really unpleasant. They would not recommend that to anyone. So we just like to tell everyone about it, so you can be alert. If you have a child who has been feeling, you know, nauseous, it's undiagnosed, what is that? You might just ask them, honestly, or have the doctor ask them if they're using regularly, because it's kind of an easy fix in the scheme of things. So, and we will, I think the next slide is, yay.
I love
That's so excited.
Yes, I'm so excited. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a gentleman named Ralph Cantor, and he's giving a presentation to Stanford students about how tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, has increased so much in the supply of weed, and how really the kids nowadays are dealing with this massively high THC that in the likes have never been seen in the history of weed.
So this is a great video to watch with your student and talk about. This is a great opportunity, and another, trick of the trade, a trick that we think supports families in these conversations is anytime you can get the topic off of your student, off of your child, like talk about their friends, talk about this guy's story, Ralph Cantor, this is a great way to have this conversation so that you're not just talking about them, you're talking about a video that you watch together. So we love this video. We watch it all the time.
Yes.
Got high. Believe me, hippies in the 60s got high. I was there, okay? That weed had this tetrahydrocannabinol in it, and it had 1 to 3% THC. And it's very important to understand this drug worked fine. People got high in the 60s, no problem. They all got the munchies and everything that you talk about. This drug worked, okay? Next thing that happened, the late 60s, was the Vietnam War. And a lot of people went to Vietnam, including me. And the weed in Vietnam was totally different. It was a totally different experience. And the reason was, it was 5 to 10% THC. Now, in order to understand the numbers on this, let's say this was 2% and this is 8%. This weed was 4 times stronger than this weed. And the reason was, it was a different strain. It was all cannabis, but the cannabis in the States was cannabis sativa, where the cannabis in Vietnam was cannabis indica. And so this is a much stronger strain. So what some of the soldiers said was, hey, listen, if we ever brought this back to the States, people go crazy for the stuff back in the States. Those people took those indica seeds and said, listen, let's not leave California. Let's just go up north to Humboldt County and Mendocino County. And they just got trees up there. We'll plant these indica seeds and start ourselves a little marijuana business. Boy, did they ever. So they started to grow just female indica plants, and that bumped it up to 10 to 15% THC. And you guys weren't born yet. Now we got to fast forward about 25 years while they are up there cloning and hybrids and fertilizing and everything else, so that the common weed in our little Northern California is between 15 and 20% THC. Compare that to what hippies were getting high on here. This is a whole other ball game of drug here. And wax is right around 50% THC. And I don't want to go through all of the ones here, but I'll tell you the last one that you end up with is a dab. And a dab is 95% THC. This is the level of where you guys are coming in to this thing here right now. And not only are you coming in on this level, but you're also coming in a teenage time. This is a whole other ball game of what it does.
So this video we show in all of our presentations to students, kind of in our primary interventions when we're going to the 9th graders and the health classes. And we also showed this in our group, the substance use support program group that we have. And I think even in our vape awareness prevention education at times. So the thing that we think is really important about this video is that, like I said, it's a great conversation starter with your student. Is our goal, Amelia and mine, is yes, we think it's great if, we tell students, wouldn't it be wonderful if we all waited to start using substances when we were 25 years old? Why would that be a great time to start? And students say, a lot of students know, they're like, oh, that's when our brain, is completely developed or mostly developed. And so we say, yes, great answer. You're listening in school. And so that would be amazing if we waited till we were 25. However, most people don't. So when people do choose to start that relationship earlier than 25, 21, currently as high school students, one of the things we would love to help people who want to quit, if people are using and they want to quit. We also really do the work that we do because, as Amelia said earlier, we want to provide students who aren't using yet with the best information possible, so that they can make the best decisions for themselves, because it is their decision. However, one of our big concerns these days is high THC concentrates. Like the cannabis hyperemesis disorder is a very extreme case, and it definitely won't happen to most students, but we have spoken to students who have gotten it in like 3 and 4 months. And, we were both surprised by that because we thought it would take longer than that amount of time, even using every day. And so one of our goals is not just to have students, not use and quit, but is to reduce use and or use differently. So some of the things we will talk about is if students are using vapes and using every day, that if flower is used instead of vapes, we're talking about bringing the THC concentrate down from 85 or 90% to 30%. So it's a huge difference. The higher THC concentrates can lead to things like CHS. They're also more addictive. And they're also in vape pens which have a lot of other chemicals in them. So those are some of the things that we'll talk about with our students. We really want to get less THC in their beautiful brains if possible. If we can't get no THC, then let's get less. And already jumping from a vape to flower or plant, you're going from, you're lowering your THC levels by like 50%, which is way better in our world. We think when we have this conversation with parents, sometimes that these can be scary conversations. So like I'll say again, most students aren't using every day, but we want to be able to have these conversations, whether students are not using or whether they are.
And one of the things we often say to students is that, we're sorry that this world of substances is so tricky for them. When we were young, we could, smoke a little weed and it was not going to be anywhere near 30% or 90% THC. Back in the day, it was those very small percentages. And, we could experiment with a pill without worrying that we might drop dead from fentanyl, and smoke a cigarette. We're going to get to that without having it be a vape with really high nicotine. So they are traversing a very intense world of substances, and it's not their fault, right? Like they didn't make it all so intense, but they're having to navigate that. And so that's why we want to give them all of this great information, because it's a way trickier world out there for substances, for sure.
And I don't know about you, Amelia, but one of the things that I have to say that I notice is, talk about a conversation starter or a connector, is that I feel like every time one of us says, I'm so sorry that you have to deal with this. One of the things we often say to our students is that you come from such a unique place in history. You are young people who have are experiencing a pandemic. You've sheltered in place. You have distance learned. You've returned from distance learning. You deal with fentanyl in the pill and powder supply. There's high THC concentrates that have never been seen like this before. And the same with nicotine. Like, wow, you are going to be really interesting, powerful, creative, innovative people, a resilient generation. And we are sorry that you have to be. And we're so curious to see what you do with all of this experience you already have as young people. And, they get really quiet and they really listen to that, like starting with an apology or with telling them about all these things that they're navigating so well and all these challenges, like they can connect with that. I think so. I don't know what Amelia thinks about that, but it's definitely is a moment where it quiets in the room when we're talking.
Yep, I completely agree. And it's true. So let's see. Oh, now our favorite slide. If you wanna blow your students' mind, just take note of the last two vape products. These are nicotine. Now we're switching into nicotine vapes. So before we were talking about weed, vape products, and now we're talking about nicotine. So you might have heard of Juul, you might have heard of Puff Bar. Those are kind of the old school ones that, were talked about a lot in the media. But now we're going to talk about the new ones that, you may or may not have heard of.
Literally, we ask our students every year what we find out every year, Amelia and I, from our students at Smushed. So after Juul came out, or Juul, we found out from students, the next iteration, we were like, okay, so are people using Juul? They said no. What are they using now? Puff Bar. We found out from Puff Bar. So this slide is from Stanford. However, the last two sections are wonderful. Amelia Nash created and updated this slide because people didn't, when I told Amelia, I was telling Amelia, I was like, Amelia, there's this Elf Bar. It's 400 cigarettes. She said, no, it's not. Like she had to look it up. She had to look up two sources to believe me because we were so surprised at how the nicotine is going up in these products. And so if you look at one pack of cigarettes, which is 20 milligrams of nicotine, that's 1 milligram per cigarette. And that is, and they take 7 minutes to smoke. So now we go to a Juul pod, 41.3 milligrams of nicotine. That's over 2 packs of cigarettes. And nobody uses them anymore. And they've been the scapegoat of the nicotine e-cigarette vaping industry. They can't use flavors anymore. They are, the pariah, and they are a superior product to the rest of these products that we have on here. They're a reusable product. It's better quality than Puff Bar, Flum Float, and Elf Bar. So it's very interesting that they've gotten all this focus as the industry has proliferated around them. A Puff Bar, which also isn't really used anymore, 50 milligrams, so 2.5 packs of cigarettes. A Flum Float is 400 cigarettes, 20 packs, or a carton of cigarettes. Amelia's going to talk to you about puffs in a minute, 3,000 puffs. The Elf Bar is 5,000 puffs, which is 650 cigarettes, which is almost 2 cartons of cigarettes in one device. One of the big marketing ploys that cigarette companies or vape companies are doing is the 5% nicotine by weight. So all these Juuls, Puff, Flum, Elf Bar, they all say 5% nicotine by weight, which is doesn't sound like a lot. However, our students and a lot of adults don't know that there is a carton of cigarettes and 1 Elf Bar or in 1 Flum Float. So the products are getting bigger, which is showing how much nicotine is in some of these products. And these are literally illegal in some countries. But interestingly enough, they are legal in our country. So just Amelia is going to tell you a little bit more about puffs and such.
Yeah, the thing about the tobacco industry is that they really wanted to hide the idea of nicotine when talking about these vape products. So they, everyone in the old days knew, a pack of cigarettes a day, that's a lot, right? Like, woo. And they don't make it easy to figure out how much nicotine is in their products. And that's on purpose. You have to do math in like division and all these things to figure out how much nicotine is in something. And so what we like to tell kids is to really focus on the puffs because that will give you a better sense of how much nicotine is in there. But even that is really tricky because what is a puff? There's no standard for what a puff is. Not like smoking a cigarette. Like it was pretty easy. You had a pack of cigarettes, you smoked one, it was gone. You knew that you had just had 1 milligram of nicotine in your cigarette. I mean, you probably didn't know that, but at least you knew you'd had 1 cigarette. They don't know how many puffs they've had. They know how many puffs they've done, but they don't know if that's a puff that's getting this amount of nicotine. Who knows? You can take a big puff, a little puff. And oftentimes students share their devices. So they, even if they knew it lasted them a week, how many of the puffs did they do? How many did their friend do? Whatever. And we also tell kids that even if Your Elf bar, that's very popular now. It's very gigantic. It has a lot in there. Even if you kept that for an entire month, let's say, like, wow, look at me, I kept my Elf bar for a whole month. That's still a pack of cigarettes a day, more than that, of nicotine, which any adult would, they get that as a lot. And kids they don't put it all together, and it's not their fault. It's really the purpose of, or it's on purpose from the tobacco industry. They really took everything that was wrong with cigarettes. They smelled bad, they hurt your throat, they made your clothes smell bad, they were hard to hide, all these things, boom, they fixed it with vape products. They taste delicious. These flavors are yum, yum. They smell good, very nice and fruity. You can hide them very easily, super discreet and small. You can do it in super easy places. And the top thing is that they don't cost that much. So a pack of cigarettes is expensive because it has all these taxes that are on there. Vape products do not have the taxes. You can get these Elf bars for like, I don't know, $20. Look at all the nicotine in there. Oh my gosh, 32 packs. You know how much 32 packs of cigarettes would cost? Way more than $20. So it's perfect for the price sensitive teenager, right? Like, get these, they like to get them big because it's bang for their buck. And they're not even putting together that there's tons of nicotine in there. And it's not their own fault. It's really, really difficult. Nobody knows this, which is why I had to make my own little part of the slide. So if you want to blow your students' mind, ask them about Elf bars or Flum floats and see if they know how much nicotine is in there, because I bet they don't.
And one of our
in our class.
That's right. That's right. And one of our favorite questions has been, and it's a new question that we've been asking this year, is what do you think is healthier, smoking cigarettes or vaping? And the answers have been so great. It's been such a great question. And it's kind of a trick question. You know what I mean? If actually, why don't we ask you all, what do you think is healthier, smoking cigarettes or vaping? And if you want to, you can put it in the chat, you can unmute and just say quickly, or, give us a reason why.
Cigarettes.
Anybody else? Cigarettes. Okay. Isn't this so funny? Is it neither?
It is a trick question.
It's a trick question. Yes, Igor. Perfect. Yeah, neither is healthy, but it's
oh, yay.
Wait, what was that?
My son told me he learned that at school.
Oh my gosh, I wonder where. So, what we like to talk to them about is that cigarettes are the leading cause of preventable death in the whole world. And they were so smart, they quit smoking cigarettes. But what the tobacco industry did is it's really smart too. And it figured out a way to make it, they are the target audience. And it really got their attention by making it taste good, smell good, fruity flavors. It's a cool looking device. And so then we also talk about, vaping, what is unhealthy about it when it's, nicotine is in there and how addictive nicotine is. Nicotine is as addictive as heroin, which is considered the most addictive drug, illegal drug in the world. And it is, there's research now that's saying that people who smoke nicotine regularly are actually getting more addicted more quickly than people who use heroin, which is a little bit of a different way of looking at it. So we'd like to talk about, and also the reason why, at one point, a lot of our students said that vaping was healthier. And we talk about that's because that was marketing. And we talk a lot about the marketing, about how these products are marketed towards our children, that, 15,500 flavors, it's the second or third reason why a lot of our students start using nicotine products. So we like to talk to the kids about this. And that's a question to ask them. And then talking about what's bad about smoking cigarettes, talking about what's in the vape products and about the high nicotine. A lot of people don't know that. Professionals don't know that. a lot of parents, staff don't. We didn't until we went, and then we didn't even believe each other. So it's a really great conversation to have. And there's nobody, and then and the bad guy, I hate for there to have to be a bad guy in any story, but the bad guy in the story is big tobacco, big vape. And so if they're seducing our children with flavors and, banana butt and unicorn poop. So let's talk about that with our kids, because teens don't like being lied to. Who does? And another question we like to ask, our young people that do use is, it's the biggest ambivalence starter of any question I've ever experienced in my career is, when is it okay for your little sister, little brother, or little cousin to start smoking, vaping, using cannabis? And you get a really firm response from the students. They're like, never. And then to kind of have that conversation, oh, why is that the case?
And one thing that we also like to mention to students is that, sometimes you can think vaping is healthier because there's no long-term data on vaping, because it's only been around for a decade. So they can say that it's healthier because they don't know what's going to happen. So we like to tell kids, really, honestly, they're guinea pigs for future weirdo lung disease that vaping gives you. Like cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome did not exist before high THC. Who knows what weird disease might come from vaping? But they don't know because it hasn't been long enough. So that's another thing that we, that we like to bring up because it's true. And then we like to talk to kids, about ways that they can reduce harm for kids who are already using. So there's a lot on here. The main thing that we like to talk about is for people to track their use. You'd be really surprised at how many people don't know how much they're using and what is, how much THC is in the weed pen that they're getting, and how much nicotine is in the device that they're using, and how many puffs are they doing a day. And just writing it down, tracking it, is a huge step towards managing it. So that is like the number one thing, just to have them even be aware of that. And then there's a lot around quitting and reducing things that people can use to reduce. I don't know if we have time. If there's anything you want to particularly point out, Jess, or?
Oh, I just was wondering if we had the bird.
I don't think so.
Okay, we can do that another time.
Yeah.
I think this is beautiful. I mean, I think, one of the things that's great to talk about is, and could be maybe a little bit more challenging, and this is something that's true for Amelia and I, and so we can talk about the kid, talk with our students about this, is that if there is substance use issues in your family, that it's the, we don't say this usually, but it's the leading predictor of a future problem with drugs and alcohol. So, we talk about that, also trauma, and there's one more that I can't remember, but so we want to have those conversations because
it's super genetic. Like if you, yourself, if your parents, had troubles with substances and maybe you don't, you definitely need to be talking to your students about it because, genetically, they could be predisposed, and they need to know that because it makes a difference, right? And you might be more aware. Student might choose not to use things, or they might want to be hyper alert to, ooh, this feels really good, alert, because they don't know that it's genetic necessarily. So super important if it's in your family to have a conversation with your student, just so they're aware, because they might not know, that grandpa was an alcoholic when he was younger or whatever. Maybe it's something that is not talked about. So we think it's super important. These are some things we give to all students at every single group and every single presentation, just some different places they could go for help. There's also Care Solace at the very bottom that all families can access for help finding help substance abuse counselors and things like that. And these are some things that, particularly for parents, if you wanted to look up some more information. Stanford has an amazing tobacco toolkit and cannabis toolkit, tons of great information. And we use a lot of their information in our own presentations. And then some things about vaping from Scholastic. And then this is our programs that you can refer your kids, kids can refer themselves, wellness counselors can refer kids, and Des, you can talk about all these.
So we only have about 9 minutes left, so I can go over these, or you can read these, or I'm sure we're gonna, this is recorded and we can share our slides. So I'll go over this, but if people do have questions, this is probably a good time. I'm sure I want to be mindful of people's time. So do people have questions, or do you want me to kind of go over our programs in a little bit more depth, or what would you all like from this moment? Okay, I'm gonna go into them then. But if one comes up, please interrupt me. I come from a large family. I enjoy being interrupted. It's how I communicate. So these are some of our programs that we hold near and dear to our heart. So brief intervention is actually a manualized intervention. It is an individual, it's individual sessions with myself, Amelia, or Dan Machowski, who we are all very passionate about working with our students when really any trouble comes into their lives, because we do the whole alternative to suspension program, but especially substance use. We have the most support around substance use, and brief intervention is an individual sessions that are 2 for the student. We have optional family and then optional follow-up. We try to offer every family an opportunity to meet with us, because it's supposed to work better if the family and the student come together and kind of start talking about what it's supposed to look like in the family. We also have, and we also kind of have our own little bit of our own way of doing this, because we are all licensed, unlicensed, supervised mental health therapists. But you do not have to be to do brief intervention. We also have a substance use support program, which is Tuesdays. That's where I ran home from. We just had our group today. It was a great group. It's 4 sessions, 90 minutes. We talk about a lot of the things we talked about with you today. We talk about spectrum of use, healthy use, unhealthy use, problems, addiction, cannabis, vaping, psychedelics, alcohol. And then in vaping awareness, prevention, and education is 2 90-minute groups on Mondays, and that's mostly about nicotine. And we do talk a lot about the same things we talked about here today. And then we try to always talk a little bit about quitting and what quitting looked like. And one of the things we always like people to know is that for cigarettes, it takes on average 7 to 11 times quit attempts to quit. And so every time somebody attempts to quit something, they're actually on the road to success. It's not a failure. It's just it's a stepping stone. Another thing that we will do is when we have students who, we also just, I think one of the last things I'll say, it's 8:09, is that, so we're alternative to suspension. However, substance use problems are not a disciplinary problem. They are a problem. They're an unfortunate, unfun, not enjoyable struggle. And so, if our students really need support because they're struggling with a true problem, what we do is we will do substance use, we'll do vape, we'll do a brief intervention with me, we'll do a brief intervention with Amelia, we'll do a brief intervention with Dan, we'll support them until we figure out a better way to support them. And we also can do warm handoffs to outside supports if there really is an issue. And we've had some pretty good successes around that process. And we also just want to, we kind of always say that to staff, to families, that if somebody is struggling with addiction, it's a hard problem to have. And we're here to support our community with that and help people get to the right place, like with Care Solace or whatnot, if outside interventions are needed to really support somebody. Because if somebody does have this problem, it's not their fault. But for the most part, we do a lot of psychoeducation and a lot of kind of like navigating the tricky terrain.
Yep. And of course, the wellness counselors can always, know where to find us and can make referrals. And That's why they're so great. We like to have them on site. So thank you so much for inviting us to come here and present. And I hope that we were able to give you some information that's helpful. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Amelia. Thank you, Dr. Jessamy.
Oh, our pleasure.
Welcome.
Thank you both. And thank you all for everything. And thank you again, Joy, for setting this up and coordinating with Dr. Veal. I just want to thank you so much. I know for me, it's refreshing to kind of learn different ways to talk about things, different things to look out for. I know I learned a lot. And again, for those of you who maybe tuned in late or have friends who are able to make it, we have recorded it. We will post this meeting on our PTO website. And we can also include, I will ask Stacia for all of the contact information as well, and all the links that were shared throughout the presentation. So we can make sure to have those available. Joy, did you want to add anything before we close the meeting?
Yeah, just really quick, and we'll post it on the PTO newsletter. Again, thank you so much for this presentation. It was super helpful. We're going to have 2 more. The next one is also going to be on a Tuesday because it follows a holiday. So it's going to be on February 21, and that's going to be with Star Vista on mental health. That's going to be a 90-minute session because it's such a heavy topic and it is a crisis in our country. March 20th will be a 120-minute session, so that will be the final one. And it's really cultural responsive. It will be a culturally responsive workshop for mental health and suicide prevention. So again, keep those dates in mind, but we will also remind you as they start to come up. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, everybody. Good night and keep safe. And we'll see you hopefully in 1 month.
Thank you.
Bye.